Ah, you feel that? It's my favorite movie-going time of the year, mid to late fall, that magical time between late summer dump and the winter awards rush when the studio mini-majors push out the bizarre, extreme, hard-to-market, maybe niche, but maybe also next big surprise, out-of-nowhere shock hit stuff that they scooped up on the festival midnight circuit over the spring. Your Mandy's, your Neon Demons, your movies that open with literally the following sequence repeated from its own teaser trailer.
Fuck these pussies! You're not getting it. I'm on your side here. Run, Lily!
We're good people!
Fuck. This is high school.
We're victims!
You feel it now? Assassination Nation is the sophomore feature from 26-year-old writer-director Sam Levinson, who I didn't realize until recording this is actually the son of legendary director Barry Levinson, who should be one proud dad, because this is one hell of a movie-going experience. You're almost certainly not ready for it, especially since a bunch of websites didn't want to let it run ads because it might be too extreme, but it's one of the must-see films of the fall, possibly the year, a searing howl of pent-up adolescent rage and defiance that begins in blood and flashbulbs as a kind of post-Gamergate update to the legend of Billie Jean, and escalates into a full-fledged declaration of war by Generation Z women and girls on American society in the age of Trump. And the only thing more absurd than the prospect of that is how confident the filmmaking and emotionally resonant the performances have been rendered by the time we get there. Which isn't to say that Assassination Nation isn't fun along the way, even though fun isn't necessarily as prominent among its intentions as the aesthetic and the trailers and subject matter might lead one to believe. A worthy comparison might be Spring Breakers, another very dark, fairly serious film with a lot of depth despite being about people who were themselves neither deep nor serious. Story-wise, the film takes place in a geographically unclear, fictional American suburb called Salem, which is being low-key terrorized by an unidentified hacker who's been ruining the lives of local politicians by doxing them and dumping their entire texting, email, search engine, and download histories into the public record, causing widespread paranoia and panic. Our point of view characters are four high school best friends played by Odessa Young, Suki Waterhouse, Harry Neff, and singer-songwriter Abra, who at first find the doxing scandal to be entertaining in their own aloof teenage way, but then find themselves targeted when the mystery hacker widens their scope to a full half of the town, and because conservative small-town America, a lot of these scandalous reveals involve sexting and naughty selfies, the panic over the hacking is replaced by vindictive outrage against any and all slutty local girls, which culminates in an outbreak of full-blown, armed-to-the-teeth, literal lynch mob vigilantism, because Salem, as in witch trials, in case you thought they were going to be subtle about that illusion, ultimately placing the four main girls after a suitably extended second act examination of their own admirably complex, nuanced, and not entirely innocent or uniform set of opinions, reactions, participations, and complications in the build-up in the fight-or-flight position. Can and will they stand and fight against an entire town and maybe an entire world that seems to be looking for any available excuse to use, abuse, and destroy them? So basically, think Mean Girls if it started with the burn book scene, quickly turned into The Purge, and then ended like a real-world sucker punch. This is obviously button-pushing, potent, powerful stuff, and it's made all the more so by the way the film employs colorful, stylized, hyper-real camera work and editing, along with young director making a statement hallmarks like elaborate compositions, multi-frame sequences, and a seemingly gratuitous but effective one-take tracking shot, but it doesn't for the most part use these tricks for the usual pressure release of ironic distance. There's an early gag about non-diegetic music and other minor offbeat touches, they're meant to signal, hey, this isn't set in reality as you'd recognize it, we're dealing with allegory, don't get pedantic later on about why they don't just go to X or how Y would have shown up and fixed everything by now and nobody bring up the word plot hole. But while drenched in style and steeped in metaphor, its physics are wholly realistic and its grasp of emotion and humanity are open wound raw, which makes for a very disturbing and difficult to pull off combination which, yes, it doesn't always entirely manage to keep in perfect balance, though it manages better than most other attempts at the same I could name, where I imagine some are going to have real difficulty difficulty is separating where the outer stylization of the filmmaking ends and the canon stylization of the characters begins, which will likely break on generational lines. This is really the first time I've seen a film go all the way in a serious fashion, trying to depict a lot of violence and bloodshed that's generally not meant to be fun or funny. It's brutal, mean, unflinching, sustained, painful, and realistic, but as carried out by a generation or demographic of characters whose behavioral reference for violence is fun and funny, if that makes any sense. Like, we're seeing realistically horrifying mob violence, but alternately carried out or retaliated against by high school kids, varsity squad knuckleheads, or middle-class suburban slobs whose concept of what to do amid societal breakdown isn't informed by, like, having been in the army or even pseudo-realistic military movies, but by Kill Bill and exploitation films and playing online arena shooters or the Purge movies. So yeah, things go to hell and there's immediately people with Punisher-level high-powered arsenals and ninja weapons and dumb homemade supervillain costumes like those idiots who show up to neo-Nazi rallies with shields and kendo sticks and whatever, but no one in the movie suddenly turns into a ninja or super soldier or whatever. It's just regular idiots flailing around with weapons that are entirely too easy for any moron to get in this country. And while I eventually got it, I wonder if it could have been more clear up front, though then again the first murder we see does make it pretty clear what this movie seems to think of people who kill as though they're starring in their own movie and the culture that would egg them on. And I do appreciate how smartphone cameras and social media have pretty much eliminated who is this bad guy monologuing for and why are they putting on a show instead of just killing them as a logic problem. The actors make a lot of the difference. Odessa Young has a lot of weight to pull as the nominal lead among the four main girls. Part of the commitment to character realism amid all the heightened allegorical unreality is that even as these are the good guys, Assassination Nation doesn't cheap out and try to make them perfect, unblemished victims or sainted martyrs. And likewise, I really admire the way it allows Abra and Neff's characters to simply exist as part of the group as three-dimensional characters in their own right with no greater or fewer flaws than the others, or as representation icons as the black character, the trans character, whatever. They're two out of the four girls. Their personalities aren't defined by their identities or unrealistically negated, which makes it hit all the harder when the bigot mob violence portion of the story kicks up and the whole, post-millennial teenage life is over all that thing, and it turns out, no, not so much. There's going to be a lot of young people who don't usually see people like themselves like this in a movie like this, and that's pretty great. Now, anything taking this many big swings will of course have its misses. Like I said, there's some stylistic inconsistency, and despite how much I dug the handful of show-off shots, I really wish they'd settled on either matter-of-fact suburban pastoralism or De Palma-esque elaborate theatricality, but the job gets done. I definitely wish also that once it became clear that the question of who the mystery hacker really is was a red herring to the real story of what people would do with doxed information like this, they definitively stopped going back to it as a story point at all and detracting from a back half that's more interesting and disturbing than any shock reveal was going to be. Because as much as Assassination Nation sets out to deliberately horrify anyone slightly older than its high school age main characters as to what the main girls consider worth taking seriously versus laughing at, by the time it arrives at a climactic tableau, essentially imagining Tumblr and 4chan lining up against one another for a real-world shooting war narrated by a 17-year-old girl's St. Crispin's Day-esque call to arms, positing that a nation in the wake of the 2016 election is so profoundly violent and unjust to women that they might as well take up arms and burn the whole thing down. The most shocking thing about it is that it's not joking around. Now, this is uneven but thrillingly competent filmmaking that will be hated, loved, condemned, held up, dismissed, elevated. I'm gonna give it 3.5 stars. You owe it to yourself to see it and make your own call.